what's up YouTube? It's your boy Wade D of Dreamslide Productions, and if you haven't heard, Metapop is winding down. The website is no longer and thus has moved to Discord and no longer has a Native Instruments affiliation. There's a couple of things I posted on Metapop that I was really proud of that I didn't really do a YouTube video, so expect some stuff regarding some of the tracks I posted. So for this one in particular was the Hypha contest. Now every year Native Instruments does a giveaway, freebie as they call it, for an instrument or something they sampled or created. This one was a natural sounding organic synth, I believe. In the trailer it had a lot of leaves and trees and natural elements. I don't know, it was a synth, it had some really great sounds. Metapop had a competition where you had to use Hypha in the track a couple times and make something organic and growing, I believe was the tag words they wanted to use. All right, so as you heard in the preview, what we came up with, I wanted to show you how I got from point A to point B. So this all started in Maschine. So let me pull up Maschine and I'll walk you through some of my process. All right, so my play box here, I think I just used preset tones. I don't recall changing much. I might have changed a couple of the chords around. I believe we are in E minor. I only see one F sharp and I'm more of a minor guy. So if you see that as G major, no one cares. It's E minor today. All right, so here's what I came up with. All right, real simple 4-chord progression. I wanted to add a bass to kind of beef up the bottom. So I found a preset in Monarch, and then we have this. All right, I had that looping for a while, and I thought I was going to do a real hip-hop centric beat. So I was rapping to myself, trying to hear what would go with this, what would sound good. And so we're going to move over to the drums. The drums are very simple. Some things I did pull from my favorite snares, but a very simple pattern just to... All right, so from here I'm in my hip hop bag. I'm nodding a little bit and I'm like, all right, so if I was to build on this and say, make this a chorus, what would I add to continue this vibe? All right, so now we're in scene 2. I added some strings here to kind of go with it. I extracted the chords from Playbox. So I just have the simple chords here. And I was listening to this loop along with my drums here. And I wasn't liking it. I thought this was stale. This was very boring. So I was like, all right, maybe I just need to swap up the drums a little bit, maybe add more of a bounce. So I came up with some hi-hat patterns and that turned into this. Okay. Cool, sounds better. I'm feeling it. Those strings are still pretty stale, pretty lame. All right, so when I was messing around with session strings, I actually found out that they have this phrase animator. I went through a couple of the phrases and pretty much all it does is add arpeggios or preset arpeggios to the chords that you have inputted into it. So I found one I like and I ended up with this. And that's a vibe. All right, cool. So it sounded a lot more full. It sounded a little more chorus-centric. Since this is a competition for Hypha, let me throw something from Hypha up on here and see what we can come up with. So since we already had that that vibe of, sorry, editing things. All right, since we already had that vibe from the strings, I thought it would be dope to try to come up with a counter melody for that using Hypha and arpeggiator kind of method also. And this is what that came out with. So a little bit of call and response. All right, so it's coming together. I wanted to add some more percussion elements with it just to give it a little bit more bounce or a little more interest rather. So I was going through a couple groups and ended up just settling on these little cowbell noises and lasers. Adds subtle characteristics in the background, something like air candy that you can listen to and catch, hopefully. Still in my hip hop bag. I was never falling, so I never made it out. Before you told me I was in it, I could never break it out. You know, vibing ideas, seeing what fits, seeing exactly where I can hear this going. Because outside of this competition, who knows? Maybe I can lease this track out or something like that to an artist and they can make it even more fire. All right, so I have one more scene in here while I was in Maschine. And the only thing it seems like I added was just a different drum pattern. So like when the hook would hit, I wanted more drums, more snares specifically, just to give it a little bit more bounce. And this is what that sounds like. All right, so it has some vision, it has some bounce. It's definitely in a hip hop kind of vein. And from here, I was like, oh, maybe I'll start finding some samples from Splice, seeing what I can do from that. And for that, I actually left Maschine and I moved over to Studio One. So we're going to go over Studio One next and let's see how this continued there. All right, and now we're in Studio One. This is my 4th time recording this for different technical issues, and it is also the next day. So yay for continuity. So this is the big project overall. This is how everything looks when it was finished. We ended up with about 40 tracks. It's like 10 tracks of things that are important and maybe 30 tracks to kind of support that idea. I started a scratch pad to kind of show where I came from versus where I ended up. One thing I forgot to go over in Maschine is I added this ignition keys synth. Wanted to play this here for you. I like that because it's kind of hip-hop and trappish, which really leans into hip-hop kind of track, pop kind of hook. It sits in there really well. And when you play everything together, you barely hear it, but the textures are still there to kind of give that vibe. All right, so this is kind of how I came out of Maschine. I printed a lot of the Playbox presets to save up on some CPU. And the next thing I did was go to Splice and get some vocal samples. All right, so these vocal samples is what really turned the track around for me. I got a couple key ones highlighted here, such as this was the first one I found, and I was really struggling to try to find a way to fit that into the track. I was placing it in hooks and random parts trying to get at the vibe, and still nothing. I went through a couple more samples and came across these. Now the cool thing about this here, we'll play it first. I really like that because the effects were already printed on it, which kind of gave it a type of ambiance and vibe. Another interesting thing is like I said, the song is in E minor. None of these samples are in E minor. I did end up melodyning the B minor one to kind of have it shift back into E minor a little bit, but I left the A flat minor one alone. And the cool vibe with that is this stopped being like traditional Western secular hip hop and is now kind of shifting into like a Southeastern Asian kind of vibe. It really tries to start to set a visual. You know, we're thinking sand dunes and deserts. It's an action movie, you know, Jumanji, Mummy, whatever. And it's the establishing shot with the heat waves and the very traditional, stereotypical way they do that in those types of films. So I was really kind of leaning into that, and then that's where I kind of left the hip-hop vibe. I did find a cool vocal for a hook. And that kind of gave me a vibe to play off of, how I was going to have the emotion impact on the track, accent the words, all kind of things for the listener to gravitate towards and to listen towards for things that's going to happen in there. And there's one more other vocal sample that was pretty significant. Sorry. And this one's back in E minor, but in the sample there's a couple accidentals that kind of leave E minor. I think there's like a 5/5, some other stuff in there. And that just plays very calmly in the background of the verses. All right, and if we go back to the main track, there isn't a lot going on. Like I said, it's really just 10 important things and other things to support it. I added marimba somewhere in there, which oddly enough still sounds very trappish in the overall scheme of things. But if you play that along with, say, these vocal samples, it sets a different vibe. And I kind of like just that kind of soloed section because it's my two ideas of hip hop and from where it started and for where I ended up just clashing with each other. So if I just do that and say the arpeggiator, all those elements really lean to each other. They sit really well together, and it gives the whole song, as far as a style standpoint, a very ambiguous kind of vibe, which I really started feeling. All right, and I'm going to let this play out from here. Everything else was just automation, a little bit of mixing tricks. I did lean heavy into my mastering bus to kind of do a little top-down situation, and that was really it. If you like the track, consider liking the video. If I get 50 likes on this video, I'll post this up on Spotify. You guys can check it out on your leisure. If you had a different vibe or visual when you heard this that you can picture in a totally different scene, leave a comment below. I love when people interpret songs differently than my own, and helps me open my eyes for more future productions in the future. That'll be it for today. I try to make this as quick as possible given the technical difficulties I had. Once again, my name is Wade D of Dream Slap Productions. You keep making music, and you have a good one.